I'm here today wearing a tool belt and a flannel shirt to try to build credibility for this short video about how to find a stud or 2x4 in the wall without using any specialized tools. But actually, since I'm not going to use any specialized tools, the tool belt is not necessary, so I'm going to take it off. To find a stud in the wall, you in fact don't need any tools at all. You need what you already have. Your brain, your ears, your hands, and a little bit of knowledge. I'm going to imagine that the person watching this video is a lot like I was as a young man. I moved out of the house into my first apartment with no knowledge of remodeling skills and no money, but a desire to have a nice house. In fact, when I was young, I was so poor, I didn't even have the money to buy a spatula. These cost about $2 at that point in time, and I had to wait until my first paycheck to buy a spatula. In fact, when I was a boy, I had to walk 7 miles to school and 7 miles back, uphill both ways. And in the winter, my mother gave me a potato to keep my hands warm in my pocket, and for lunch, I had to eat it. Actually, well, with that aside, let's try to gain a little bit of knowledge. The 2x4 stud that we are looking to connect with looks like this and will be installed like this with the drywall in front. These studs are generally installed about 16 inches apart from wood center to wood center, and that rule applies probably about 80% of the time, but we're going to discuss a technique to establish whether the stud is there. The next thing I'd like you to understand is that the electrical boxes are connected to the wood. This is a remodel box, so it's not a perfect example, but they are connected to the wood, usually either nailed in or with a metal clip across the front that is nailed to the stud. So when you can find an outlet, you can find the stud on one side or the other. You can establish using your brain and using your ears by tapping which side the stud is on. And you can hear the difference between the hollow wall and the wall supported by the stud. So the stud is located on this side of the electrical box. So working up from that outlet, we can assume that our stud continues through here. Now, remodelers and contractors are famous for using blue tape, and they will often mark the stud with blue tape, like that. But I'm going to assume that the poor person who has just moved into their new apartment doesn't have this blue tape, which is rather expensive, but can just take something like a Post-it note, cut it up, and mark the stud on the wall. Now, assuming this is not the location where you want to hang your picture or heavy object, you can use that rule of 16 inches to go out 16 and find the stud where you would like to locate your item. I'm going to assume that you would have access to at least a ruler or a tape measure to mark out those 16 inches. But if you happen to have or can borrow a regular tape measure, you will find along the numbers that every 16 inches is marked in red. This will help you to locate the other studs. You can simply put your measure at 16, and mark the stud that we will tentatively use to hang the picture. We can test these locations with the tap test. sure enough, they do sound like the studs. We can mark where we're going to hang the picture and proceed to nail it in. Hopefully, you have access to a hammer, although when I was young, I didn't have a hammer. But I did have tools for my cars, so I would use something like a ratchet as a hammer. And if you don't have the tool like this, you could actually go out and use a rock. I would angle the nail in a little bit and tap that baby in. You'll hit your stud and be good to go for a heavy object. Other than the tap test, there are other simple things you can do to verify the location of the studs. My brother, who knows nothing about homes and remodeling, but knew that I was interested, bought me these rather odd creatures called the studbuddy. It's a fairly strong magnet inside of a plastic case. You can use these to find nails that are in the stud, holding the drywall to the stud. Something like this. The nails are not always consistently located, but that's another way to verify the location of the stud. Finally, you can get fancy stuff like stud finders. Here's a relatively inexpensive example of one. These are nice because they will tell you where electric is located, and you can run along the wall. It says electric, AC alert is here, edge of the stud, putting the center of the stud around there, far edge of the stud there. Edge, center, far side. And you can see our tap test worked relatively well. Another example, a little bit more expensive machine from Costco. Has a level on it, which is relatively nice. Same essential function. Edge of the stud, where the stud is located. Walking away, coming into the next stud. And you can see that our simple tap test worked. Now, if you can afford fancy things like this stud finder, you don't need this video. So, all you need is your brain, your ears, your fingers, and a little bit of knowledge. You can find a stud and hang your picture. Thanks for watching.